Hello and welcome back to Tracking Trends. Today we are going to be taking stock of VB G Ramji, Viksit Bharat, Guaranteed Rozgar and Ajeevika Mission Gramin. The new act that replaces the nearly 2 decade old MGNREGA, which was one of the world's largest rural job guarantee program. MGNREGA was replaced by G Ramji in December 2025 through a parliamentary act. From this financial year, the new act was expected to be in force. But the new financial year has come in, and we see no signs of the G Ramji getting rolled out on ground. And this has serious implication, especially coming at a time when the war on Iran has impacted the Indian economy in ways more than one. More importantly, its impact that's getting channeled through various sectors, we see the risk of a similar problem crisis of employment emerging both in rural India and urban India. And whenever we have had such crises in the past, over the past decades, we have also seen MGNREGA came to be a much needed buffer. Unfortunately, with MGNREGA gone, VVG Ramji yet to be rolled out, there seems to be no such buffer. Which brings us to the question, are we staring at a crisis of livelihood in rural India? That's the question I ask my guest today, Dr. Satya Narayan Mohanty, a retired bureaucrat, author of a recently published book, Unpolitically Correct, which looks at development planning and public policy in India in recent times. He was a secretary in the government of India. Before he became a secretary, up until 2011, he was also the senior advisor in Planning Commission in charge of the MGNREGA program. But before I go over to Dr. Mohanty, my usual request,
Thank
as always, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, do it right away. Spread the word around about our conversations if you like it. Now let's get going with today's conversation. Welcome back,
you.
Dr.
Thank you,
Mohanty.
Rajesh. Yeah.
Thank you for taking time to join us. Are we staring at a livelihood crisis in rural India, especially in states that have been traditionally, crucially dependent on MGNREGA?
There is cloud in the horizon, but it is difficult to say that we are staring at a crisis yet. And there are difficulties ahead going by what all is happening in our ambient world. But to assume a crisis proportion, we require further details to come in. But one thing is sure that there will be disruption in terms of employment, particularly in the low end, and that is the circumstances in which MGNREGA had come very handy in the earlier occasion. And this time around, if rollout is delayed and there are uncertainties surrounding the project or the scheme, then what will happen is that the shocks which the poor people will take in will be much more.
Okay. Now tell us, this act, it got passed in Parliament in December. Why has it taken so long to get it implemented on ground? There was a Parliament question very recently, and the Ministry of Rural Development replied to it saying that we are in the process of finalizing the modalities, and once the modalities are finalized, then we will decide on the normative allocation of funds for different states. to our viewers, we can say that the budget has provided for about 90,000 crore rupees that will be spent under VV Ramji scheme.
$86,000, I think.
Yeah,
86,000.
sorry.
86,000
Yeah,
crore.
yeah. So what are these modalities? Why do they take so long? Can you take us through, since you have dealt with the scheme so closely?
The bill has become an act, okay, but it requires a set of rules to operationalize it, which is part of the subordinate legislation. Okay. The rules are to be framed by the government. It doesn't come back to the parliament. It's to be framed by the government. Then only it becomes operational. And then why it has taken 3 months, I cannot take, but it is a subsequent action after the passage of the bill. Okay. After the passage of bill, it is a subsequent action. And since it's a brand new act itself, what will happen is that it will require fresh criteria and like population, poverty ratio, past utilization, and asset creation quality, etc., to come in. So why it has taken 3 months? Your guess is as good as mine. Okay, but it does take little time after the passage of the bill, and the reason for that is the criteria are to be laid down, and once the criteria come in, then only it can be rolled out. Because as in today, MGNREGA doesn't exist. It has been repealed. MGNREGA Act has been repealed. So whatever budgetary line you are seeing with regard to MGNREGA, that is for making payments towards spending payments, number one, and number two, for wrapping up the incomplete work, perhaps. These are the two things. But
So
as
So
yeah,
if there have been some Manrega work on which state governments have spent money, and their claims are pending with the center, and they are to be transferred in this financial year, that would be part of this 30,000 crore additional allocation that Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman did. Besides that, suppose a canal has been dug halfway and that work is continuing. Now it is to be completed. So that could also be a part of it, right?
could be there. Could be there because if the rule says that incomplete works are to be completed within the format of the MGNREGA,
Hmm.
obviously that amount will be utilized for that. But new
Hmm.
works which will come up will come under the fresh criteria, and as you know that it will be normative allocation basis,
Hmm.
and the demand driven nature of MGNREGA is probably being replaced by the normative allocations. Okay.
We'll
And
talk a
which,
little more. We'll talk a little more in terms of explaining that to our audience. But
yeah,
before that, I just wanted to get your view on. You said now that the main act has been passed by Parliament, there are now sub legislations that will be required to uh, bring in the
operationalized.
rules and operationalize it. Now, this sub legislation will also require parliamentary approval,
No,
or
no, no,
they
it
don't
doesn't.
require. They don't require, but they may take time.
Uh, Depends how long the government will take. It can be done in a quarter, can be done. I think it can be done in the quarter,
Mhm.
and but it looks like one quarter is over.
Mhm.
December, and we are in April.
Mhm.
Okay. So, but it does take a little time, but
Mhm.
not too long.
And once these are done, state governments will also take some time to soak it in, understand, and then make their proposals, right?
Absolutely, because it is
But
brand new,
yeah, so
brand
there is
new, and the
there is
features are different.
features are different. Okay,
It is not.
how
Yeah.
are the features different? Just let's take a quick look at how the new act differs from the earlier one. So under MNREGA, as you can see it in the chart, uh, under MNREGA, 100 days of work in a year was guaranteed. That is now being proposed to be increased to 125 days a year. That's about the employment guarantee. As far as the fiscal architecture is concerned, earlier 100% of MNREGA was funded by the center, so far as MNREGA wages were concerned. As far as material and certain other things were concerned, states would put in 25% of the cost from their exchequer. Now, states will have to bear 40% of the cost of a MNREGA project. For a select set of states, which are the Himalayan states like Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, and northeastern states, this would be a 90-10 ratio. But for all other states, 60% of the cost will be put forth by the center, 40% will have to be borne by the state. As far as the budget mechanism is concerned, MNREGA was an open-ended architecture. Whatever expenses came up, whatever projects the states undertook, it was demand-driven, and the center footed the bill. That will no longer be the case, which is what Dr. Mohanty was just explaining. There is now a fixed normative allocation cap. Over and above that, if a state decides to spend, then the state must put it from its own pocket. That's the big change. Both the fiscal split and the budget mechanism. These are two very major changes. As far as operational seasonality is concerned, MNREGA was available all round the year. The new act says under VBG Ramji, work will be paused for 60 days during agricultural peaks. It could involve the harvest season, it could involve the sowing season. And then the last bit is there's a big promise as to how it will be modernized through geospatial tracking, biometrics to be used to verify beneficiaries, and a mobile dashboard to monitor the progress. Whereas the MNREGA was mostly a manual scheme, complemented with certain legacy digital apps. So that's the big change. Now let's uh, kind of come back to discuss how each of these changes now affect uh, the way BV Ramji's implementation could be materially different from MNREGA. Let's start with the guarantee program.
Okay.
This one says 125 days. Earlier one 100 days were guaranteed. So why are the critics crying foul?
First thing is that Manrega was a right to work architecture. There is a right. A person comes and he wants to work. Within 15 days, he is to be provided work, or you will have to give given some compensation until the time work comes up, etc. So there is a right to work architecture. The moment you go to allocative, the normative allocation of funds, the right part of it gets fairly watered down because you are governed by basically the budget, the constraint of the allocation, and the right person takes a backseat. Number one. Number two, it was demand driven, and today, of course, it will be allocation based system. Okay. Um, so if that is the case, despite the declaration that you can get 125 days employment against 100 days earlier. When it is an allocative system, what happens is that employment may be less than the stipulated maximum because you have got a budget line. You have got a you are allocating amount for states, you are allocating the money for areas, etc., etc. So that is the second part. Uh, then the third part is you brought in that point that states' exposure has become more. Number one, they will have to provide 40%, and the northeastern states and smaller states will provide about 10%. Okay, so that also creates problem in as much as That also creates problem because what happens is that you have got debt stressed states, the states which have taken a lot of debt and a lot of their budget goes towards the debt servicing. Debt stressed states will be Punjab, West Bengal, Rajasthan, and Kerala. Okay, they will face some problem. And there are high fiscal deficit states. High fiscal deficit states will be Bihar, Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Andhra Pradesh, the present day Andhra Pradesh, that is uh, not the old Andhra Pradesh. Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, MP, and those five states that I told about, debt stress states, together will face some stress. Um, there are states which have got low revenue earning capacity or there and high dependence on the government of India money for MGNREGA earlier. Okay, because they will be the northeastern states. Of course, their exposure is continues to be less. It's 10% only, and Bihar. Okay,
What about a state like Madhya Pradesh or Odisha for that matter?
Orissa is in a sweet spot.
Okay.
Largely because Odisha doesn't have, it is the state with the lowest debt. Okay,
Mhm.
that's number one. Madhya Pradesh is a debt state. Madhya Pradesh is a fiscal deficit, high fiscal deficit state. Okay, but Odisha has the states which are neither debt stressed or have got high fiscal deficit are basically Odisha, Maharashtra, Gujarat, and UP. Okay, these are the four states which are, and there will be some states which will have some features of the one category or the other. So obviously, one thing is there that these states which have got the stress arising out of the debt taken, states which have got high fiscal deficit, and states which have got low revenue buoyancy. Okay, and they will certainly face problem with this increased exposure because and now what has happened is that some of few of the things which probably will go to the state account like the unemployment allowance,
Yeah.
yeah, will go to the, and if the states, and that is precisely why nothing will start in a hurry without people being clear about what the rule says with regard to G. But a little aside, because I'm finding it difficult to pronounce such a big name. Okay,
Huh.
because pronounce such a big
For,
name that
for convenience sake, we can say G Ramji.
okay. Even there, uh, first of all, Bikasit Bharat, I find it very pompous because your target date for it is generation away. Okay. And you are talking about that today. It just doesn't make any sense to me because I'm
As
a,
as Kin said, in the long term, we are all dead.
right. So maybe 21 generation away, we do not know what percentage, at least I will not be there. Okay. So that is one. Then the second part of it, I remember one chief minister of Andhra, combined state of Andhra Pradesh. I was explaining to him something, and he said, "Ki, what is this vulgar name?" Because it was such a longish name for a program. He said, and Sanskritized, etc. He said, "What is this vulgar name?" So I just, of course, he was not accusing me. I was just explaining the program uh, introduced by the previous government. So, as an aside, it is a difficult tongue twister if you say Vikasit Bharat, Ji Ramji, and if you still further, half a minute it will take. By that time, I have forgotten what it means.
Hmm.
Okay.
Now, tell me, yeah, besides being a tongue twister, which makes it difficult to recall or refer to the scheme, it also seems that despite its claim about modernizing things, it's kind of bringing in a lot more complications, which is why probably it has taken time. Would you kind of explain this switch to this whole normative allocation thing, and also, mm, you know, the unemployment allowance, which is now going to be on the states' side. How does that also become kind of a disincentive for states to uh, push for projects under this scheme? If you can,
You
if
see,
you can,
earlier,
if you can
yeah,
come closer, because earlier it was quite good. So yeah, because
okay.
otherwise, yeah, I think this is perfect. Yeah.
Earlier, suppose a group of people wanted employment, okay, they used to give a, this thing to Gram Panchayat, all right, and within 15 days they had to be given employment. If it is not given, from the 16th date till the date the work started, they used to be paid unemployment allowance, and everything was in the account of the government of India
Hmm.
earlier. Today, in the new scheme of things, it is not the responsibility of Government of India. It must be, if you are paying unemployment allowance, the states must provide over and above that 40% exposure. Okay. Then the second point which you wanted me is a normative allocation.
Hmm.
Normative allocation is that okay. The normative allocation is that like any other centrally sponsored scheme. All right. Centrally sponsored scheme is the scheme in which state governments bear a part, central government bear either 50% or 70%, etc. And then this goes on. So naturally, it is frozen. It is frozen in two budgets. It is frozen in the budget of the state. It is frozen in the budget of the center. Okay. Once it is demand driven, this figure which is given in the budget is indicative. But by and large, what works out is that it is indicative, it can exceed. Okay, that you will also find if you look at the budget figure of the Manrega from 2020 at least, okay, 20, you will find that at the um, stage of revised estimate, RE stage,
Hmm.
even if the budget was, let's say, 60,000 crore, it has gone to 70,000 crore. If it is
Hmm.
85,000 crore, it has gone to 90,000 crore. So it has gone on. So naturally, it is not completely frozen in time. Okay. So that is the difference. But once you have got a normative allocation basis, you will have to work backward and distribute it among different states.
Hmm.
Okay. So once it is normative allocation basis, the right part of it goes to the takes the back seat.
Hmm.
It goes to the back burner because they are really not right. Okay, so because you will the states will discharge the right to work within the limitation of the budget available with them, which can
Hmm.
take the shape of two or three types. Number one, if they don't have the 40%, whatever they can match, they will get equivalent around one and a half times of that. To that extent, their budget comes down. Similarly, even if they match 40% and their figure is given X and the requirement is X plus Y, the Y part of it they will have to sacrifice.
Hmm.
So Y part of the rights being exercised is being sacrificed. So that is the difference between a demand-driven and the right architectured um, program and a normative allocation basis program.
Hmm. So you spoke about Gram Panchayat, that, and we also in the first slide we showed that the new act also retains the Gram Panchayat's primacy in planning a project. Uh, what the new act provides is that they have identified four domains, thematic domains: water security, rural infrastructure, such as similar four domains. And within these four domains, the gram panchayats will have to kind of come up with plans. Now, what we see is that while that is there, the origin of the plan is local, but the destination and thematic restrictions of all these plans have been heavily centralized under the new act. How is that going to affect the Gram Panchayat's role? I mean, will it be as it used to be, or it will be just kind of as you just do a rubber stamp job?
Uh, Unfortunately, the post office system in the government doesn't work. The post office that you do the rubber stamping and send it back, it also carries with it some risk of some problem coming up later. So obviously, the guy who is doing it, he will take his time. He will apply within his limitation. He will apply himself. He will give his gun. Okay, and then what will happen? Is delay is inevitable. Okay, but that doesn't. More than that, I'm worried about two things. Number one is Panchayat prepares the plan, but it gets approved by someone higher up. Okay. If that is the case, then delay is inevitable. Gram Panchayat's power is also restricted in an extent. To an extent, it is restricted because some of their projects will not be accepted, etc. And the worst part of it, for these small little projects, etc., going on, uh, it goes against the principle of subsidiarity. Principle of subsidiarity is certain things must be done at the stage it is appropriate to do. Suppose you are digging up a drain or doing something, etc. It is something which will not be better decided at the state capital or the national capital. Okay, all right. And also, it is not that like you can give a four broad category and say restrict it to that. You are basically ignoring the felt need of the people there, of which if you're sitting at a place, a state capital or the national capital, you will have very little idea about. Okay. Because people have got their lived reality.
Yeah.
Okay. That is one. So Gram Panchayat's power diminishes, and the next level of the government chooses the schemes which runs counter to the local requirement and this thing often. Okay, not always, but often. So that is a problem. And so I am worried more about the subsidiarity principle really getting elbowed
Getting
out.
that. Yeah. One last question before I let you go. The new act says that for about 2 months, 60 days, work can be paused under VV Ramji, and the government's explanation is that this is to ensure continuity in agricultural operations, so that people don't go away from villages or labor doesn't get diverted. But there are other views also on the issue. How do you look at that?
Um, I am not very sanguine about that part of it because at the top level, you really cannot plan out for every individual how he will spend those 60 days in between. The choice remains with the man in any case. Okay. But what is worrisome is that if this had certainly had a push factor in terms of rural wages rather than keep, which normally tends to be depressed, okay, because there is no alternative available. And since Manrega was available, rural wages slightly went up. Now, since for 60 days, there won't be, you cannot do Manrega, which means that the labor loses its bargaining power to an extent. And what has happened is we are probably going back to pre-Narega days, pre-Manrega days. The feudal control over the wages will may surface back. I really don't know. But if I put all the attributes together and find that the bargaining power of the labor is substantially watered down, then I think it will give some kind of strength to the uh, feudal interest who do not want wages to go up. And whereas wages will have to go up. The reason being, if we face inflation across the board, correspondingly the wages should should go up to handle the inflationary life, isn't it?
Incidentally, so every year in the
Hmm.
last week of March, a new wage rate for Manrega work is notified. This
Okay.
time, we haven't seen any notification yet, which actually even the uh, pending or spillover Manrega work, people are not clear, because there is no new wage notification that has happened, which is again a very worrisome development. And as you very rightly said, Manrega wages often worked as a benchmark, and it also gave a bargaining chip to labor that, you give us more than this, otherwise we will go and work under a Manrega scheme. That's
Hmm.
now gone. We don't see this. And as you were saying,
Or at least you are not forced to work in the bargain basement price.
absolutely, absolutely. And as you said, one quarter is done, gone. The ministry is saying they're still finalizing the modalities. Looks like, this program may not get rolled out for another quarter. The sowing season will be Kharif sowing season will be upon us. There will be no new Manrega new wage rate, which means we could actually have a situation where labor might end up working for the Kharif season at a rate that it cannot bargain for better, even to take care of inflation that has happened from last year. And that will be a sad state of affairs, besides the fact that we are already hearing, because of LPC shortage, because of other things, various informal sector businesses shutting down, street vendors going out of business because there are no LPG cylinders. A lot of people from metropolitan cities, we are hearing, are heading home, particularly from poorer states like Odisha, Bihar, and other places. Kerala is going to be hugely affected if the Iran war prolongs, because it's a remittance economy, and that remittance money, which finds its way to Kerala, also is the money that drives real estate development there, which has become the new destination for a lot of laborers from Odisha, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh. They are going to suffer. So that's why I started off by asking you the question: are we seeing staring at a livelihood crisis in at least some parts of rural India? Having said that, the
We
last
will certainly face a lot of discomfiture. Okay,
discomfort.
certainly. There is
Yeah.
no doubt
You,
about
you
that.
you do not want to sound alarming or dramatic, to say crisis, but you definitely see there is a certain degree of discomfiture that we would see. There is certain kind of disruptions also we might
Yeah.
see. Uh, so, last question. Manrega had done reasonably well, both as a political instrument, for parties that were in power, and also as a buffer in times of crisis. Why do you think this regime chose to dispense with it?
Two things I'll tell that even when Manrega was running for the last 10 years or so, I read that there were budget cuts, there were delay in payment, delay in the release of money, and the what some writers tell that there is forced technocracy, in the sense like if you tell a poor fellow that do the EKYC, he will take 20 days time or 1 month time. Okay. EKYC for his Manrega account. So some similar kind of thing is to happen. So that is one. But with regard to why they had to change, uh, only the government can tell. Okay. But at the same time, my feeling is that there is a preponderant thinking that all this scheme, welfare, is an anathema. That welfare is antithetical to development. And development is not what Amartya Sen and other people think as development. Okay. As development, people basically, by development, people basically mean growth. Growth, they see infrastructure as development. Okay. Not so much education and this thing as, not so much a focus on that. Infrastructure or India becoming the fourth largest economy, etc. So the good direction is development, growth, development of that type, growth and infrastructure. And welfare is the wastage. Okay. And welfare is basically they think that is this charity or benevolence. But that is not true. The rights model of welfare makes an active and engaged citizenry. Whereas if it is a uh, if you consider it is as something like welfare without rights and saying that like it's a passive duty model. Okay. So that is, I think, what has come into mind of people is the that welfare is wastage. Welfare is not movement in the right direction. But the very fact that 80 crore people in India are even today being given that ration, free ration or subsidized ration of rice and dal and that kind of thing shows that politically they people understand that without that people will slump into much higher deprivations. That is in terms of consumption. If you think like that for the consumption, for work, your thinking should have been as empathetic as the previous one. Okay. So I think it is basically to the mental block that welfare is based on charity, on benevolence. It is a wastage, it's a movement in the wrong direction, and we should revert back to the direction of good direction of infrastructure, etc., etc. It is fine. Then what happens is fiscal irresponsibility is something which people point out. Okay. But fiscal irresponsibility on 85,000 crore or 1 lakh crore is nothing. If you really look at it, the tax cut, give corporate tax cut, or the loan write-off,
Waivers.
loan write-off. If you look at it, parallelly all these things are going on all the time. But there is very little conversation on that. But there is a lot of conversation on the freebies. There is a lot of conversation on these kind of things because I do not know. I think that there's a mental block. There's a people have understanding which is completely what should I say unsympathetic or it does or they don't know how 50% of India lives.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, I think you pointed out a very, I mean, I use the term a sense of empathy with the most vulnerable sections of the society. That's what was there in Manrega, which is missing perhaps in VVG Ramji, and it's also getting reflected with the lack of urgency in actually getting this act uh, rolled out on ground. And we hope people in the government are watching this program. You have heard former secretary who was at one point in time looking at this program very closely, saying this: if we can show the urgency in cutting excise duties on petrol and diesel to protect our consumers, if we can cut import duties on petrochemical industry to protect some of our industries, we can show a similar urgency in getting the sub legislative rules quickly done and get this program rolled out so that we do not head into a summer of discontent. Thank you very much for your time, Dr. Mohanty, and
Thank you, Rajesh.
to our audience, thank you for your patient watching. If you have liked it, please press the like button. Again, if you have not subscribed to our channel, do so. Press the bell button so that every time we have a new show, you get notified right away. Thank you very much. Keep coming back to us.